All right, let's take a look at Unit 4, Money, Banking, and the Stock Market. Here are the review questions. If you need them, go ahead and pause the video. So just a quick quiz. We'll do this in class, so we'll just skip this slide for now. So money itself. Now, you see this graphic right here. Here's a guy trading a fish for, part of a ham. This is called bartering. And we don't really barter anymore. So one of the things about money is it's what you call a medium of exchange, meaning instead of trading these goods exactly, this guy may have a store, this guy may have a store. He'll have money in his pocket from different trades, and if he wants to, he can go into this guy's store, and instead of handing over a fish, what he produces, he can hand over what he's given when he produces, which is money in his pocket, and he can get the ham. So the properties of money, it's portable. Okay, you can't really carry around a bag of fish 50 miles and hope to trade for what you need. But money itself is easily portable. You fold it up, you put it in your pocket. And that should be one of the properties of money. Like money itself isn't paper. It's actually made out of, it's close to like Levi's. It's made out of cotton. And that makes it pretty durable. It's accepted. You may not know there's a $2 bill and it has Jefferson on it. And it was kind of funny. I was in line behind a guy at 7-Eleven and he went to pay for something with a $2 bill and they wouldn't accept it. They thought it was counterfeit. And it's not. A $2 bill is what you call a legal tender, meaning the government says that it can be used to settle debts and or pay for things. And the guy argued and argued, and he ended up leaving like upset. And I didn't really tell the clerk anything. I mean, whatever. But money has to be accepted. And if you have U.S. currency and you're within the U.S., people have to accept it. Now, they don't have to accept the trade. If they're willing to say, like if they want to kick you out of the store or something like that, that doesn't like, I have money, I can pay for this, and you're getting kicked out of the store because you knocked over a shelf or something. That's a different story. It's a unit of account, meaning it tells you how much you have. So like if you have money in your pocket and you take it out and you count it, that tells you how much you have. It's sort of kind of a stupid thing to think about, but it's just basically you can add it up and it's easily added up. It isn't like gold where you have to go get a scale and think, oh, how many ounces do I have? Oh, wait, I have 15.9 ounces and then okay, that converts to da-da-da. No, this actually says $1, $10, and all that stuff. I briefly mentioned this. It's a medium of exchange where instead of directly trading items, you hand money over. And it's a store of value. A dollar will always be a dollar. And I put a little asterisk next to that because that isn't exactly true, but it does store value. If you have $5, you can always count on it being $5. Now, you may not always count on it buying what it used to. That's a little different. But $5 will always be $5. So we did discuss bartering right here. And then the gold standard, so like a gold coin right here. Gold was used as money in pretty advanced societies. Because it was soft enough to stamp, the emperor's face onto it if another emperor took over. It doesn't rust, and it's shiny, and pretty much everyone knows, what it is and stuff like that. It's very accepted, or it became very accepted. Same thing with silver and stuff like that. So that's why you always hear maybe people trying to hunt for sunken treasure out in the ocean or something like that. If they do find gold, the gold is still good. And the concept of fiat. Fiat is basically the government gets involved and says, this is money. The government can get involved and say, gold is money, or they can say gold isn't money. But whenever the government gets involved and says something is or isn't money, then there you are. Now, you do have something called Bitcoin, which the government doesn't control. And Bitcoin still works as money. So it's not fiat. It's controlled by the market of Bitcoin. And we'll talk about that later. So this is a quick video. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the money supply. The supply of money is important. Why would you want to measure it? And the simple answer is inflation. If you have too much money in the economy, prices will go up. If you don't have enough money in the economy, prices will go down, but then people don't have money to go out and make purchases. So there is this delicate balance of having money in the economy and not having money in the economy. We'll talk about inflation and all that stuff a little bit later, but inflation is kind of a killer. One way it kills is like, let's say your grandma hid $100 under her bed in 1950. Inflation is about 3% a year, so that $100 would barely be worth $20 today. So money doesn't hold its value. Because we keep having to put out money. That's why, bread gets more expensive or something. So you have two categories of money. You have M1, money 1, and money 2, M1 and M2. And M1 plus M2 equals the money supply. But M2 includes M1. So when you look at the M2 category, it's basically, the equation is M1 plus M2 equals M2. What's in the first side of the money supply, M1, also is included in M2. So M1 is your on-demand stuff and money. So that's like cash you have in your pocket. That includes debit cards and credit cards, anything that you could easily turn into cash or use as cash. And then deposits. Deposits are kind of like the intention of using cash. So if you get your paycheck, you make a deposit. So you're holding onto a check, but it's not yet money. You got to put that in the bank and then you withdraw money. The same thing with your a business. They may have money in their cash register. Or they may have like a check or something like that. But at the end of the day, they send all of the checks they have to the bank, and then they convert those checks over to money. And that's why debit cards and stuff like that are so widely used, because it gets rid of that deposit lag with stores and stuff like that. And then you have the M2, which is like a cash reserve. So investments are a cash reserve. So if you buy, you have stocks too, which are investment, but there's many different ways you can invest money. If you buy, say, a savings bond, you buy one for $500 and it's supposed to grow, and then after 10 years, it's going to be, let's say, double, so you get $1,000 in 10 years. That bond can be sold at any time. It can be sold like the day after you buy it, in which case you get your $500 back, or in 5 of the 10 years, in which case you may only get like $750 or something like that. But you can turn things into cash. This doesn't include things like houses or cars or something like that. Like if you're really hard up for money, you sell your car and you have money. It doesn't really include stuff like that. That's sort of another category we're not really going to get into. Let's take a look at the banking cycle. Before this slide in class, you're going to watch a video. But so we'll just move on to this slide. So the banking cycle, so how banks make a profit. Now you may hear that like a bank is a nonprofit. That just means that whoever owns it gets the money. But it's not a nonprofit. Anytime you have a business or a nonprofit where money is made, somebody makes money. So money enters the banks. You have deposits from customers. So if you go give them your paycheck, interest from borrowers. So, if the bank loans you $1,000 and you owe interest on it, essentially the bank has still lost that $1,000, but they're getting the interest out of it. So that's like their monthly income. So I don't know the interest rate, but let's say you borrow $1,000, but you got to pay the bank. It's payment plus $300. It's making that $300 back until the $1,000 are back in. And then fees for services. So, hopefully you don't get penalties, but if you keep your debit account under a certain balance, they penalize you for it. And then the bank retains required reserves. We'll talk about that in a bit. And then money leaves the bank. So interest and withdrawals to customers. If you have a savings account, they give you interest for saving money. So that's part of the deposits. And then they give you interest for that. It's lower than the interest that they loan stuff money. So like a bank account, it's kind of sad because like a savings account, you may get 0.03%, which is absolutely terrible, or 0.3% every month. But if you got a loan from them, they'll charge you like 7 or something like that. So they're making 10 times, 20 times the amount of, or would that be 200 times the amount of money that they're paying you. And then withdrawals, anytime you take money out of the bank, you're withdrawing money. That's how money leaves the bank. Money loaned to borrowers, so business loans, mortgages, personal loans, car loans, all that stuff. And then the cost of doing business, anything, those fixed costs, variable costs, we talked about all that. So let's go from the loan part right here. Money leaves the bank but gets paid back, or a lump sum gets deposited into another bank. So like, let's say you take out a loan at a bank and you go to buy a refrigerator at Home Depot. So you take out a loan and, or you use a credit card, same difference. You take out a loan, use a credit card, so you're taking money out of that bank. You're giving it to Home Depot. Home Depot is then going to take that money and put it in their bank. So that's basically how a lump sum gets deposited into another bank. And then consumers spend the money with businesses, so you've already sort of done that, like when you purchase the fridge at Home Depot. And then the businesses, they deposit their profit into banks directly, or invest it in, something else. I mean, just because a bank has stock doesn't mean that they just, or just because a bank gets money in doesn't mean that they just have to keep it and wait for customers to use it. They can invest it too, like buy stocks or, something like that. And then businesses pay their employees, and all that stuff. And then the cycle all starts again. Now, let's talk about bank retains required reserves. So you have something called the money multiplier, and it's part of fractional reserve banking. Those are the required reserves. And we'll get into what that means later, but just for the time being, any money that a bank has, they can't loan it all out. They have to keep some money with them. So it could be 10%, it could be 20%. So the customer deposits $1,000 in the bank. Now the bank isn't going to sit on your $1,000, they're going to loan it back out. But they have to reserve, $1,000. So the reserve is 10%. So they have $900 to loan out. So anything they have, they want to loan it all out because they make money off of that because of the interest. That's how they make money. So they loan out the $900 and then you spend the $900. So at this point in the system, they have $1,000, your $1,000, not physically sitting there, but just, if you want to withdraw the $1,000, they give you the $1,000 because they're making money. So at this point, there's $1,900 in the system, and the bank has $100. So this it's a little tricky. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around. But money just isn't cash. Money can be just like what you owe me. Like if you owe me $1,900 and then the next day I'm like, give me $1,900, you're like, nah, dude, I got to make payments. I'm owed money. So you work at a job and they pay you every 2 weeks. Well, 2 weeks is 14 days. On that 13th day, you're not going to go to your boss and say, give me my paycheck. He's going to be like, I don't have the money. I get the money on the 14th or on the 14th day, and I'm going to hand it over to you. So I mean, it's basically the $1,900 is money owed to everyone. And then you just basically rinse and repeat. Come from step one, someone takes that $900, deposits it in the bank, the reserve is 10%, there's 810 to loan out, they loan out the 18, and again, in the entire system, now there is 2,710 because the 810 plus the 1,900. So this increases the amount of money owed. And then 810 keeps going, and it goes, you can finish this whole equation out until it hits zero, right? Because that number is going to always drop. And this number is going to always go up. So the more of these transactions that happen, the more this goes up. Now, here's the deal. If this cycle stopped, all this money would disappear. It's kind of like, you guys probably watch cheerleading at the rallies and stuff like that. So they all have their part to play, but if one stepped away, the entire system would collapse. And if the entire system collapses, I mean, everyone gets hurt, the whole function disappears. So this whole system of you getting a paycheck because your boss deposits the 810 or the $81,000 that he makes in revenue, that's your paycheck. And to get your paycheck, he has to pay you, and if that system stops, he can't pay you, and if you can't go out and buy stuff, then we're all screwed. So the $1,000 ends up being, after 3 steps, it triples, more than triples. So you're going to do an activity. I'll have the activity up here, but I want you guys to do the math. So assume you have a reserve requirement of 20%, all right? You start with $100, so 20% of $100. Chart out the money multiplier with that $100, and then actually, let's make it 1,000. So I'll change this to make it 1,000. What is the total addition to the money supply after 5 rounds? And then, use a calculator. You can, but it's also 4th grade math that you want to be able to possibly do in your head. So, try to do this in your head. I sometimes have to use a calculator because I get fatigued. I don't feel shame, but you want to be able to do basic math without having to immediately go to your calculator. And then you have financial intermediaries. Banks serve as intermediaries between savers and investors. So if I ask you, what's the purpose of money? You're going to say spending, because that's what we do with it. But the real purpose of money is investing, because when you invest it, you make money. And with that money you make, you can keep it and invest more later and also spend it. And the more money you have to invest, the greater that reward is. You can buy a little pontoon boat, but given enough time, you can buy a yacht, something like that. So savers, you and businesses, make deposits to financial institutions. Here they all are. And then they make loans to investors. So if you get a car loan, you're making an investment. You're making an investment in a car. It's just too bad that the investment is basically, it's a loser investment, because although you get use out of the car, if you go turn around and sell it again, it's not any kind of good investment. If you buy a guitar that's high quality and you use it, the value may stay the same, or it may go up depending upon the quality of the guitar. So the best investments increase in value, but a home even, those can increase in value. Those are the best investments, the ones that increase in value. Because when you go to sell it, you make money. A car, when you go to sell it, you don't make any money. You've lost money, and then you will continue to lose money. So why is there an illustration of the house at the left? Because we're savers. And why does the flow chart flow from left to right? Because it really starts with us. We make the money, and then we're the ones performing the economic activity. And then the bank, pretty much brokers the deal, and then here are the investors. And it circles back around, okay? Because this group right here funds this group. Okay, so you get a paycheck because these people invest stuff. So compound interest, we'll discuss this in class, but I'm not going to go over it because it's just math. But it's a good idea to know how compound interest works. You deposit $100. If you deposit $100, they'll actually charge you because they want more than that. And then they're willing to pay you 5%. That's actually less than, it's like 0.5, just for the sake of the graph. So you get 105, and then the next month it keeps adding, keeps compounding. And if you get all the way down here, your principal is doubled, and it continues to double, and your interest goes up as well. Now, the other side of that, that's you putting money into a bank or an investment or something like that. The other side is compound interest and credit cards. So again, I'll go over this in class, but you can study it. Couple of things I want to point out. So APR is your interest rate. So you owe 5% to the credit card company. So if you spend $500 on a credit card, you'll owe $525. The interest you've added to the principal is $25. So you pay $200 and you bring your balance down. But then let's say instead of $500 that month, you have the remaining balance plus you spend $400. This raises what you owe. There's your interest. It went up, and you pay $200. Now, at this point, within 2 months, you're pretty much above your principal, even though you've been making payments. Because 200 and this 200 just doesn't take out that 400. Then you keep going, and whoopsie daisies, you have a big expense, or you go on a shopping spree or something like that. And you have $1,000. You spend $1,000. Well, you owe the credit card company $1,640. You make your $200 payment. You're down to $1,440. Now you spent so much money that you can't make a payment the next month. So you're at $1,440. You don't spend anything. There's your interest. Your interest kind of went down a bit because you didn't spend any money. But then you don't pay off your balance. Now, when you do that, credit card companies in the fine print, it says if you skip a payment or something like that, it can take up to 2 years, but then they're going to jack your interest rate to 20%. So whatever you have outstanding, you now owe them 20% on top of that. So let's say you spend $400. That's the amount of interest that has added. So you can see it goes significantly up. And then you have to double your monthly payment. But when you double your monthly payment, you only paid off what you added on the card. You didn't pay off the additional interest. So you may think, man, I made a big payment. You really didn't. You really didn't. You just paid off what you originally spent, and you still owe that $385. This is how credit cards get you in trouble. And then you check out the math, check out the math, check out the math. You spend $0, but look, I mean, the interest you're only paying off, you pay off $500. You're not chewing away at what you owe too much. You keep going, and then something pops up. You got to spend $400. And look at from here, 1722, you got 1792. You just basically wiped out month 7. You're making progress, and you just basically wiped out the progress you were making. So you're back at paying $500, and then you just basically have to, like, you wipe it out. Month 7 doesn't exist. Month 9, and all that stuff. So, how long can you pay off the balance if you're spending, 0? It compounds. So basically, if you take a look at it like this, you have $1,452. Your interest, keeps reducing, but not by much. You got 370, so you subtract 370 from the 500, you get like 120. So that math problem right there, 120, is what you subtract from the amount owed. So every month you'll subtract, a certain amount of money, but you're barely $100 off of $1,400. If you're subtracting $100, that's going to take you 14 months. Okay, that's over a year, and or at least a year. But then basically you can't use it at all. That's under the assumption that you don't use this at all, because if you tack $400 and you pay $500, that leaves you $100. To go against the interest, that's $270. You drive the balance up again. And I know that's a lot of math and a lot of different things. So I mean, if you need to like repeat this, or I'd honestly get a calculator out and start looking at this. I mean, credit cards can get you into a lot of trouble. So here's some more videos on the stock market, stock exchange, and all that stuff. What I'm going to do is I'm going to post the videos underneath the presentation as well, because there's a lot in here that kind of goes with the lecture. So the stock market, stock is part ownership in a company. We've already gone over that. The dividend is what you're paid. So if you give somebody $200, it's basically the revenue cost profit model. So the cost is buying the stock. The dividend is what you made off the stock, so that's your revenue. And then the capital gain is your profit. And you want to be making profits off of your stock ownership. Now, the measure of how the stock market is doing, you got different markets here. You got the Dow Jones, which measures the top 25 richest companies, and how the math is done in the Dow Jones and stuff like that is really up to the club itself. It isn't like you can pull out a calculator and figure too much of it out. I mean, they follow rules and stuff like that, but it's rules they sort of created themselves. The S&P is just a different market. It picks random companies and averages out their performance. So they basically function the same. It's a place where you can buy and sell stock. You have penny stock, and penny stock is usually like there's a company that just hasn't proven itself yet. So its stock goes for really cheap, and they better pull a miracle if they can pull out a miracle, they can raise their stock price and not be penny stock anymore. But the big thing that you want to walk away with is the stock market is a quick predictor of economic health. If you see a huge gain in the stock market, that probably means things are going well. And if you see a huge dip in the stock market, that probably means things aren't going so well. It's kind of like if you are staring straight ahead and you see something in the corner of your eye and it looks dangerous and you blink and turn real quick, that's kind of the quickness, the predictor of economic health. Sometimes the stock market gets really twitchy on stuff that just isn't like that dangerous. And we'll talk about a few cases where that actually collapsed the economy. So the stock market can be troublesome sometimes. Taking a look at other markets that exist, other financial markets, it's important to note that if anything can be traded, if somebody wants to buy something, then somebody's there to sell it. So if you're wondering why all these markets exist, I mean, markets exist because there are buyers and sellers want to make money. So one thing is bonds. Now, I don't know if you've driven around Concord, but you may see a sign that says vote for Measure J. Measure J is supposed to improve the facilities of our schools. But what it basically is, it's called a municipal bond. And what a municipal bond does, or a bond, is it's money promised to pay back. So the city, it goes to the voters, and the city says, hey, we're going to go to the bank, and we're going to borrow $100 million. Oh, wow, okay. But to pay off that $100 million, we're going to have to raise your property taxes. We're going to have to put in an additional, I don't know, every $100,000 that your home is worth, you're going to have to pay an additional $15 per $100,000. Oh, okay. Well, for that to happen, the voters have to vote on it. And then if they do, then the transaction takes place. So a bond is a promise to pay back money. You have to, basically. So if a business goes out of business, somebody comes in, usually the court, and they divvy up all of the things that are worth money in that business. And basically, they pay off the bondholders first. Futures. Futures market is essentially betting on something happening. You can think of gambling as a futures market. So you say, this horse is going to win the race, and then you hope that that horse wins the race. Well, there's all sorts of futures. I bet that the stock market is going to crash and it's going to dip below this percent right here. So usually, sometimes future markets, you're actually betting against people doing well. And that's kind of something when we talk about the housing crisis and the housing collapse. There were some people who bet on the housing market collapsing, and they made out, they became millionaires. You also have the commodities market. So, any sort of, pig bellies or something like that. It's almost kind of like a futures market. Like Christmas is rolling around, and at Christmas, people eat ham. So what I'm going to do is I am going to invest stock in companies that produce ham because I suspect that da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm going to think that people aren't going to buy ham. So in which case, I'm going to see if someone else wants to buy my stock in ham because they think that ham is going to, do something. So the commodity is you're trading a specific item, basically. You're betting on food. You're betting on steel. You're betting on iron. You're betting on, all of this stuff. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. I mean, it's not just like horse racing. Like, hey, this is the first time I went to the horse track. Let me just bet. They do their research and they try to figure out what's going to happen. An index fund is a little different. You're essentially betting on the performance of a stock market. You're not investing stock in the stock market. You're betting on the overall performance of the stock market. So it's kind of like taking a step back and saying, I think the stock market will go up. I think it'll go down. And when you invest basically in a fund or an index fund. And what they do is they go for stocks that are doing well, and they just kind of spread the wealth out instead of focusing on a single company and seeing if the stock price goes up and down. You're like betting on all stocks. It's kind of like roulette where you spin the wheel and you put your chips down on as many numbers as you can because, hey, it's probably going to work out. Now, you're going to win and lose, but honestly, index funds pay off better than trading stocks. And this is in the long run. If you want the fast money, sure, stocks will work, but stocks only work for a few people. Most people who participate in the stock market end up poor. So it's kind of like playing the stock market's kind of like scratching a lottery ticket. You don't know if you're going to win. And like I said, you do your research, but sometimes that's meaningless. If you invest in property or real estate, and then Trump throws down a steel tariff, and that stops the importation of steel, and you can't get buildings built, whoops, your property is worthless. So there's all kinds of things that can happen that can affect, what you do. If you knew that Trump was going to throw down a steel tariff, you sell your property. Okay, you make a ton of money, and then when if that tariff goes away, or you hear that it is going away, well, you rebuy other property. and you probably make a killing both ways. A 401k operates kind of like an index fund, also called a mutual fund. Basically, it's a huge, this is usually attached to your job. So you put in your income and you pick and choose like what you're gonna, if you want high risk, so I want you to invest totally in the stock market. That's high risk. Very low risk is actually investing in municipal bonds. Bonds always pay off. It's low risk, but you don't get a big return. The thing about retirement accounts is you're usually growing that egg for 40 years, 45 years. So over the long haul, making low risk investments pay off just as well as making high risk investments. And then a currency market. Currency is a little tricky. You're betting on the health of economies. Now, here's something kind of tricky. Let's say that you have a small up-and-coming country. And this country is all death to America, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Well, this country starts printing its own currency. So one of the things that can happen let's think of it like you're a spy or it's espionage, or, the United States wants to kind of hammer this country and teach it a lesson for being all uppity. So what the United States does is it sort of spurs investment in its own country, and also sort of they try to figure out what. So let's say this country exports oranges. Okay. Well, this country may not be a big consumer of oranges. Maybe the United States is a big consumer of oranges. So what the United States does is it raises tariffs on incoming oranges. So this country is trying to get up and running and like, hey, we're going to compete with the United States, and we just slap them with the tariff, and then they can't sell their oranges, and their orange sales are taxed in their country. Tax revenue then is collected, and then currency is created. All right, let's take it a step farther. If you want to take down their currency, what you do is you start a rumor that their currency is going to be worthless, and that scares investors. And basically what you do is people have to start using your currency. If you make new dollars, you have to have people buy and sell things using your new dollars, otherwise it's not going to work. So what you do is you scare investors into thinking that this country just isn't going to get on its feet, and nobody uses its dollars. And with no tax revenue coming in and no dollars to be used, because when you use dollars, you can, generate business as well. Or when you print money, it goes out in the economy, and then people use it. If people aren't using your currency, then you can't draw taxes off of it, and or it just collapses your currency. So sometimes there's kind of political manipulation that can occur. And I'm sort of recounting what happened, what we did to Brazil. Is Brazil wanted to compete with us in the frozen orange juice concentrate, those little frozen tubes of orange juice. And we slapped a tariff on their on the importation of their I think their oranges or their actual orange juice concentrate. And it drove Brazil kind of out of that business. And so you can keep countries from competing with you if you manipulate your currency or things like that. Sometimes you bet on like Canadian currency becoming more valuable, but what you do is you just invest, you just take your dollars and then turn it over into Canadian dollars, and you make money doing that way. And then if you hear the American dollar is going up or going to go up, you invest again. You trade your Canadian dollars back into US dollars. So let's take a look at speculation. Speculation itself can kill a stock market. So let's just go through the steps. You can consult a stockbroker in close to 95, 96, and he tells you to buy Microsoft stock, and you buy 50,000 shares. And in early 2000, you make, if you do the math, you make $250,000. That's pretty good. That's like five times what you initially invested. Or I mean, it's if you brought in, say, $50,000, so it's $1 a share or something like that. So while you're making bank, you tell 40 of your friends to hook you up with stock that you tell 40 friends and you hook them up with stock in 1999. But at that price, it was $40. So your friends buy 500 shares each. They can't afford it. So they take out a loan in order to purchase the stock. And that's called buying on the margin. And the broker isn't sweating it because Microsoft stock is going up. It's just going up and up and up, and it's been doing that for years. Cool. Well, one hiccup in the economy, selling less product, poor management, maybe an unrelated market collapses, like when the housing market collapsed. You saw Home Depots go out of business, construction companies probably folded, all of that stuff. So it causes a general dip. Okay, boom, 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 boom. It pops back down, so it was at 55. This causes a massive sell-off, and then the stock price is like ding, 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 and then you have another drop, and it bottoms out to 15. So anyone who hangs on their stock, you're at 15, and they sell it. Now, here's the thing. When you panic and sell, that makes the stock market worse. If you just hang on to it and just ride it out, you'll end up probably getting your money back. It'd definitely be higher than when it bottomed out. But most people are chicken and they sell right at this line here. And when you start selling up here, it causes just that massive drop. It's like on a roller coaster, a couple people scream and then you start screaming. And we'll take a look at prediction markets. That's another video. And then we'll discuss why the housing market busted.